A hobby of mine, as an offshoot of my work as a master gardener, is talking about mason bees, pollinators. So I got into this a couple or 3 years after my training. As a master gardener, you're required to take about 40 hours of formal training. When I went through the training, it was a class setting over a whole week. After COVID, we got into online training, and now we have a hybrid type of training experience where you can either take in-person classes or you can do it at your own pace online. If you're interested in becoming a master gardener, I'd be glad to help you get connected with the website and show you how to sign up. But during the training, I learned something really interesting that I went back and revisited. One of the modules during the training was on pollinators, of course. And of course we knew about butterflies, and we knew about honeybees, and all different kinds of, obvious things. But they talked about mason bees and leafcutter bees and other solitary bees that we really don't see because they're just really small, very shy. They're not, very visible. What I learned was, or what I heard that I had a hard time believing, was that one mason bee or one leafcutter bee will do the work, the pollinating work of 100 honeybees. Okay. And I thought, well, I've seen honeybees at work, and they're really busy. How could a other bee be 100 times more busy than a honeybee? Well, that was completely missing the point. What I learned was that their physiology is different. They have evolved so as to be very different than hive-oriented bees, like bumblebees and honeybees, or wasps, or other things like that. So as I went back and reread that chapter and then kind of did research online, I discovered that, yeah, that's what everybody says, that one mason bee can do the work of 100 honeybees. So I thought, I need to do something about that for other people like me who were ignorant, and ignorance is not a sin, so to speak. It's just being unaware. Once you are aware, you can do something about it. So what I want to talk with you about today is how to propagate peaceful, prolific pollinators. This is a picture of a little mason bee, and that little booger will fit very easily on your little fingernail. He's very small, she's very small, and unassuming. Okay, so what is a mason bee? A mason bee is a member of the megachilid family, which includes 20,000 species of solitary bees worldwide. And the word I want you to focus on is solitary. 4,000 of them are native to North America, and there's about 40 species that are native to Arkansas. So they're here. They're already active out in the woods and probably in your garden. We just don't see them very much because they're very small and shy. Okay, here's an interesting fact. 90% of all bee species are solitary bees. Only 10% are social or hive-oriented bees. Farming honeybees, for instance, is a big business. And there was something on the news the other day about a truck that overturned somewhere and let loose like 250 million honeybees. That truck is symbolic of how we have been able to capture a certain kind of bee and propagate it in such a way that it can then be set loose in a managed way out into orchards. The Pacific Northwest, where they raise a lot of apples and other fruit during the springtime. That's big business, hiring a company to come in and let their bees loose into your orchard. But there are also many mason bees, blue mason bees particularly, that are indigenous to that area, that are farmed, if you want to say it that way, propagated and used for pollination. And they don't really compete with others, with each other, because there's so much pollination business to be done. But just think of the fact that 90% of all the bees on the planet are the kind of bees that I'm going to be talking about. So mason bees and leafcutter bees are the two that we're going to look at. Mason bees get their name from the way they create their home or their nest for laying their eggs and propagating their young. They use mud. So, mason. Those of you that are brick layers or stone masons know all about mud. Okay, so these little boogers come in all kinds of interesting shapes and sizes. They're very small and unassuming, very shy, and all unto themselves. Like those of us who are introverts, we might say they are the introverts of the bee world. When we think about mason bees then, we say, why would we bother trying to propagate these things? If they occur naturally, can't they just do their own thing? Well, the answer is yes, they're all the time doing their own thing. But as I said before, if we have a little pollinator who is so prolific, why not try to help them along? And so what's in it for us is that if we are able to create our own little mason farm environment in our area, these bees are very provincial. They like to stay in one place. Whereas a honeybee will travel miles from the hive to go find whatever they're looking for and find their way back. Mason bees very seldom fly more than 500 feet, which would be just maybe a few standard house lots in where I live, in a neighborhood in Springdale. So if we can provide enough food for them when they hatch out to sustain themselves and go through the process of laying and so forth, we can create our own little ecosystem with mason bees and leafcutter bees right in our own backyard. Since they don't serve a hive, their purpose is to just take care of themselves. One female mason bee, once fertilized, will carry maybe 20 eggs. And most of them are female eggs, some of them are male eggs. And somehow nature has evolved her to know which are which. So when she's laying, she can sort them out and put them in the most efficient order inside of her nest, so as to be able to have the males hatch out first and the females later. They are solitary, but they don't mind living in close proximity to others of their kind. A lot of us don't like to be around bees because we're allergic to them. I remember being stung when I was a kid, and my hands swelling up, and some people have really extreme health reactions to being stung. The nice thing about mason bees is that they are not inclined to sting. Only the females will sting, but you really have to grab them in your hand and crush them before they'll think about stinging you. And the people who have tried that out and have been stung describe it as kind of a very mild irritation, kind of like a mosquito bite. Okay. Now, that being said, if you're interested in being around these bees but you do have allergies, I would suggest that you talk with your doctor about the risk involved there. Almost no one that I have talked with who does mason bees or leafcutter bees has ever been stung. So the incidence of bee stings from mason bees is very, very small. Mason bees, like everything else that's evolved in nature, its main purpose in life is to reproduce itself. So we're going to look at the reproductive cycle of the mason bee and find out how we can then interject ourselves into it to help them along. While they're doing their thing of reproduction, they're all the time looking for food, and they're looking for resources to put into their nests. So they're looking for nectar for themselves, for strength, and then they're also looking for pollen to put into the little cells that they create to lay their eggs in. So that's where the pollination comes about. I want to go back to a statement that I made earlier, and that is that the physiology of a solitary bee is different than that of a hive-oriented bee. You probably notice when you watch a honeybee going from bloom to bloom that its back legs have these little sacs on them with the yellow pollen, okay? And when those sacs fill up, they take it to the hive and unload it and come back. Mason bees, solitary bees, are created differently, whereas a honeybee has basically a smooth body to be able to put all the pollen into the sacs. Mason bees are really fuzzy on the underside particularly, but all over themselves. But as they go from blossom to blossom, they're looking for food, they're eating, they're collecting pollen, but they're also just accumulating all this stuff, kind of like a brush. And when you use a brush to scrub something, it just takes up all of this stuff, whatever you're scrubbing. So mason bees are able to do this 100 times what a honeybee would do because it's all the time sloughing off this extra pollen as it goes from blossom to blossom. Okay? So that's where the mystery of a 100 to 1 comes in. Mason bees live a fairly short life, whereas hive-oriented bees have ways of living from year to year inside a hive. Mason bees, not so. A female bee will live about 6 to 8 weeks. Males will live 2 weeks, maybe 3. Mason bees are early spring bees. The trigger that wakes up mason bees in nature is daily temperature. So when the daily temperature averages about 55 degrees, that's their signal to start waking up. They hibernate over the winter after they've, done their nest building and laid their eggs and so forth. And like butterflies or any other things, there's that progress from an egg to a larva to the metamorphosis into a bee. And then it sits for the winter, and then when the temperature starts getting up around 55 degrees during the day, they start to wake up. They emerge from the tunnels that they build, and they start doing their thing. And it's just a frantic, survival-oriented life to be a bee, to look for food, to get ready to lay eggs, and then to make sure those eggs have every chance to mature and become bees next year. So mason bees emerge in the early spring. I have April to May, but that's really based on like Pacific Northwest or northern temperatures. Down here, March is a good time to think about mason bees coming out. And that's an important thing that I'll talk about just a little bit later on. Leafcutter bees are summer bees, so their cue to wake up is 75 degrees or so on average during the day. As the environment warms up and it penetrates into their little tunnels, they'll start to stir, and it's their cue to get after it. All of these bees finish their work by the end of summer. Mason bees are usually done by June, and summer bees, the leafcutter bees, usually done by September. So in the spring, mason bees emerge, like I said, when the temperature's in the mid-50s. This is something I just can't get my mind around, but it's a fascinating thing. Like I said before, a female bee with, say, 20 eggs knows which of those are female eggs and which are male eggs. So, like for instance, when they find a hole, these are like 6-inch deep holes, which are pretty much ideal depths for most mason bees. She'll find a hole and set up shop, and she'll start putting mud in the back to create her little apartments, and she will load up the back part of the hole with female eggs and leave the front few apartments for the males. So when they start to wake up, the males come out first. They go out and scout the area out. They start getting strong for mating, and they do what guys do. They just hang around and wait for the girls to come out. And as the females emerge, then they start to get to know each other. They show each other around, and they start doing their things. The purpose of the male is just to fertilize the female. Once his job is done, he's out of here. So when that activity is over, he dies. That's why he only lives a couple of weeks. I heard an old country song somewhere on the radio years ago. There was this strong, independent Montana woman who owned a ranch. She did everything she could by herself except the things she couldn't do. And the refrain of the story is, "And I only need a man for the things a man is good for." Very pragmatic, and that's what nature is like. So as soon as the guys are done with their thing, they're out of here, and as is true in all areas of animal life, the women do most of the work. So the females spend their lives getting ready their nest and preparing to lay their eggs and secure everything. After all of their eggs are spent, they die. So you can see this is a very small window of opportunity that we have to propagate these prolific pollinators. When you see something like this, is this good or bad?
Great.
It's great. Yeah. Now there's all kinds of holes that we're going to find in leaves in our gardens. The ones that are on the inside of the plant usually are not good because there's something chewing on them that doesn't need to be there. If you're, this happens to be, I believe, a redbud leaf. I found this out in my garden, and this is great. We haven't got to leafcutter bees yet, but if you see this going on in your garden, consider yourself blessed, because there are leafcutter bees doing their thing in your garden. And this kind of damage to a leaf is not fatal, not critical. Nature is such that it can provide for everybody and everything. So leafcutter bees cut out these tiny little circles. Now let me just say, mason bees use mud, leafcutter bees use leaves to make their little walls for their apartments. So in the summer, leafcutter bees come out at about 75 degrees. They do the same thing, only they use leaves to build their nests. Holes in the leaves of roses and other soft-leaved plants is a good thing. I had a leafcutter bee chewing on my crepe myrtle. And I don't have a lot of roses, but every once in a while I'll see a rose leaf that's got holes in it. So here's a picture of how they work. They just cut these beautiful little circles, and when you look at them, their mandibles actually do look like a pair of scissors to cut these things. Okay, so the life cycle of these bees, these solitary bees, is that they hatch out in the spring or in the beginning of summer. The cue is not what day it is on the calendar, but what the temperature is, again. Females locate food for themselves and for their young. They go after it. They locate holes in which to nest. They lay as many eggs as they can, maximizing the ratio of female to male eggs. using mud, they create little cells. I think I've got some pictures here in just a second. So each of the eggs lays on this little nest of pollen, and it eventually hatches. It becomes larva. The larva eats the pollen and starts to do the change process. They morph into cocoons, and they hibernate over the winter. Here's a picture of trays of cocoons. There's different ways to do houses or holes. This is a block of wood with holes drilled in it. My friend Randy made this, and he made the back so he could take it off and clean out the holes with a dowel or a pencil or something, and use it again for next year. My method for doing things is to make trays, half trays, or trays with half holes in them, so when you put them together, they make a complete hole, and you can split them. And these you can't really harvest the eggs out of. They have to just kind of be overwintered in your garage or something, and then put out in the spring when the weather warms up. People who propagate mason bees as a business use something like this, where they can actually get at the cocoons, scrape the cocoons out, clean them off, and then store them in the refrigerator or somewhere where they'll be safe until they can be put out for next year. But you can see how there are little individual apartments. Each wall is just a little piece of mud. And these little bees have the ability to somehow get through the mud and get out and get free. In the upper left-hand corner, we got a picture of a reed, just something that you can harvest down by the creek or the lake or something. But they're just fascinating little creatures. They'll find any hole that they can to. Let me see if I can find. This is the striker on my gate latch on the side of my yard. You see the mud and the hole? A mason bee set up shop in there. You know, it's only 4 inches deep, so she must have been desperate, but you know, they'll use anything they can to make a home in. So let me just go back here. What we can do, in order for us to interject ourselves into their life cycle, we can prepare ourselves to help them along. Mother Nature, or evolution, operates on the principle of overabundance. Perhaps you've seen a David Attenborough documentary on sea turtles. I saw one the other day. If 1 in 100 sea turtle babies makes it from the nest to the ocean and survives, that's a miracle. 1 in 100, okay? The percentage of survival for things like mason bees is better than that, but we can still help it along. There are a lot of natural predators and conditions that diminish the crop of bees every year, but we can do something to help that along. So the first thing we can do is provide a clean and safe and efficient housing environment for them. And those include all kinds of commercially available, or you can make your own nesting areas. Something with tubes or holes. A mason bee, their body turns out to be about 5/16 of an inch. Okay, so if you have a 5/16 inch hole, that will just fit the average mason bee's body ideally. Leafcutter bees are smaller, so they would prefer a 1/4 of an inch. But, as you can see from the striker on my gate, that is almost 3/8 of an inch. But they'll still fill it up with mud, and they'll still lay their eggs. They just have to haul more mud, and it takes them more time. So you've probably seen stuff like this online on Etsy, or if you have access to a bee YouTube channel or something like that. Everybody's got different designs for how to put a house together. And let me say that the appearance of the house means nothing to the bees. Okay, that's purely for you and me, what we like to see out in our garden. Something pretty, something that fits our motif, something we like to look at. But bees will find anything anywhere as long as it's a hole about that deep to do their thing in. So as we think about what kind of an environment to set up for them, there are some do's and don'ts. I'll start with the don'ts. If you want to use tubes little tubes like reeds, natural things are best. Okay, things like plastic straws are a no-no. Paper straws with wax on them are not good because natural things breathe. Plastic things don't. And moisture is always going to be present, and moisture breeds fungus. So fungus is one of the natural enemies of a healthy nest. So don't use plastic straws. You can use paper straws. You can buy those on Amazon or something. Just Google in mason bee straws, and there's a plethora of places from which you can get straws that kind of unwrap, and you can get to the cocoons that way. Okay, if you're going to build a house, holes need to be 1/4 to 3/8. I would prefer, like I said, the 5/16, but 3/8 would work also. Holes around 6 inches deep. Studies have been done by universities around the country, and they all say basically the same thing, that when they did experiments on how deep or how long to make a hole, mason bees, whether it was 1 foot or 6 inches, would only use about 6 inches of a hole. Okay, so that's why we have bee houses about this size, we who make our own. If a female bee starts up in one hole and decides she doesn't like that one, she'll leave whatever eggs she's laid and go find another hole. So they don't have to have just one hole for a load of eggs. Don't use treated lumber. It's got nasty chemicals in it that are harmful. Cedar evidently is okay. It's interesting to me that we use cedar to line our cedar chests, to keep moths and stuff out, but they seem to do just fine inside of cedar wood. So the nice thing about that is that they last a long time outside. No plastic straws. Clean or replace one and done types of housing. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but Randy has created this so that there's this back here, so you can take the back off every year during the summer after the bees have come out, and you can put a pencil or a dowel through there and clean them out for next year. Reusable paper tubes. Reusable wood trays. I talked about that a little bit. Style of enclosure is really according to our preference. Here's a picture right here of a mason bee that's been out looking for food, and she's come back to where she's in the mud, getting ready to collect some mud to lay an egg. And you can see how yellow she is. She's normally black, but here she's covered in pollen. Yeah.
So the eggs stayed over the winter.
Yeah. When I say cleaning it out, I mean like after all the eggs have come out, or all the bees have emerged, they leave the mud and they leave all the trash from the larvae eating the pollen. There's all kinds of poop and nasty stuff in there. So you can reuse something like this just by cleaning it out. And Randy says that he's got a couple of these on his back porch, and they're just full all the time.
Yeah.
So, they do work.
Back off that, you said something earlier about harvesting the cocoons and bringing them in your garage.
Yes, yeah.
Do you leave these outside year round?
I would not. I just bring the whole block in and put it in the garage.
And then put it out in March?
March, yeah. And when I say put it in the garage, it needs to stay below 55 degrees. Okay. Otherwise, they'll wake up, in February if we have a warm spell and you got a garage full of bees, which is fine, but they'll die if we get a cold snap. So we need to, yeah. I think I'm not really making myself clear in terms of how we fit into this process. Let's say we have a tray system, okay? So we set the house out with empty holes in the spring sometime, maybe February. Get ready. The bees show up. They set up house, they lay their eggs, and then over the summer, they're creating the cocoon inside. Okay. Before the first hard frost, we want to bring in whatever the nesting mechanism is that we use to either A, put it in a place where it'll stay cool enough to where they won't hatch out until we put them out in the next spring, or B, if we use the tray system, in, say, October, we can open the trays up, gently scrape out the cocoons. There's some methods for gently cleaning all the literally crap off of them. Okay. Check them for bugs. I mean, there's other mites and things that will get in there and try to eat them. There's a kind of a wasp that gets in, a small wasp that uses those for food. So we clean them up, and you can buy online some neat little gadget that has a storage area on this side and then a place to put some sort of a little moisture pad, because in the refrigerator it's pretty dry in the refrigerator and they need a little bit of moisture. If they dry out too much, they'll desiccate and die. Okay. But you can buy just a little storage thing online from Crown Bees or other websites to do that. Yeah, but you wouldn't think about putting them in your refrigerator, but it's the same environment as outside. It's cold, but it's not freezing. Did I answer your question there? Okay, yeah. So where we interject ourselves is in that overwintering process to keep natural predators and conditions from diminishing the crop.
So when you put them out, where do you put them?
Okay, we'll get to that. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so let's say that you have your crop from last year in your refrigerator, or you've gone online in January and ordered some mason bee cocoons. They'll ship them to you. And it's warm enough to put them out. I always build my houses. They're actually like this. They're diamond shaped, and my trays lay like this, but I leave about a 3/4 of an inch gap up there, and you can just sprinkle the eggs in there, and the mason bees will stay as close to the place they were born as they can. Okay, so you can seed your house by putting the cocoons right in here. This one here, if it were mine, I'd just put the cocoons on the side of it or somewhere, just somewhere in proximity, so that then when they hatch and start looking around, oh, there's a bunch of holes right here, and they'll remember that. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know about that. They'll have to hatch out and decide for themselves. Yeah. Did that help?
Yeah, so you put them like in your garden or where you?
Oh, you mean the boxes? Okay, yeah. So the cocoons, put them somewhere close to where you want them to nest. These need to be off the ground, at least 3 feet, better higher, because ants and spiders and stuff are inclined to investigate what's going on. So you can put them on a pole, you can mount them on a post on your fence, on a tree, but having them up higher helps. The interesting thing about today is that I brought some other things like bat houses and bird houses, because Randy, my friend, makes all these, and he asked if I'd show some of the other ones. The subject of a birdhouse is really interesting because what do birds eat? Insects. Okay. So do you want to put your birdhouse right next to your bee house? No, probably not. Okay. If you have to have these two in your backyard, put them as far apart as you can. And that isn't to say that the birds won't find the mason bees, but it'll be less likely. Putting them next to each other would be like a cafeteria over here for them. And this thing on the front is a bird guard. The bees take a little while to remember which hole is theirs. So while they're hovering around, the birds can come pick them off. So that just gives them a little more safety. Okay, there are a lot of natural predators to mason bees. One is, of course, birds. Small mason wasps, I mentioned, they get into the holes and they lay their eggs on the cocoons, and then when the wasps emerge, they use the cocoons or the larvae for food. Mites, molds, spiders, ants, and then other diseases. Then there are, I guess, what I'd call unnatural predators, human activities, like spraying insecticides and destruction of habitat. So if you have, say, early spring flowers, they're going to look for the things, bulbs that come up, whatever early spring flowers you have in your garden, they're going to look for those. Also tree blossoms, things like that. So if you want to have mason bees, you need to have things. But don't spray during that time when they're out so that you keep from poisoning them. So best practices is place bee houses on east-facing surfaces, about eye level. For me, that's 6 feet. For you, it might be 4 feet. But more than 3 feet off the ground. People have put them, like in the gable of their houses, and that does fine too. East-facing is important because when the sun comes up, and it needs to be in a place where the sun will have exposure to it, in the early spring, it warms up the nest and it stimulates them to come out. East-facing also means that when the sun sets, it's not going to be in the blazing sun. And if you know what our summers are like, so if you have a block of wood like this facing west in the blazing sun, it's going to cook them. So that's what the east-facing strategy is about. Keep them away from bird houses and bird feeders. Replace used houses or keep the holes clean. Use trays or paper tubes. Harvest, clean, and properly store the cocoons to prevent infestations. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention when I was giving you the rationale for why I got into this is because honeybee keeping is a lot of work. It's expensive, and it's getting very precarious with all of the diseases that are going on and the new different kinds of insects, wasps, that are coming in from other places of the world and ravaging hives. And the bee stings, I just don't like being stung. So it's a year-round process to do something like beehiving. you can see here that if you take this up as a hobby, you're only looking at a few hours a year. Once you invest in or make whatever mode you want to offer for holes, it's just a matter of putting on your calendar when to put out the cocoons, when to harvest the cocoons. Okay, so March and October. All you do in between that time is just look at them. And then once you have spent a couple of hours in the harvesting and cleaning process, then you wait until March again. So for people like me that would like to have lots of hobbies that don't take a lot of time, I'm kind of a hyperactive child type. I like a lot of things going on instead of just one over a long period of time. Then this is an ideal type of hobby, but it also is really helpful for the long-term health of our planet with propagating these things. Okay, so there's different ways that you can get information and training. There's any number of websites that are dedicated to mason and leafcutter bees, training videos and so forth. One is beediverse.com. Beediverse is the work of an entomologist, a woman who teaches at the University of Vancouver in Canada. And she's a professional bugologist, and she's taken up this propagation project to where she gives all kinds of neat videos, and she offers equipment and supplies and things like that. But it's a great source of education. The other one that I mentioned is Crown Bees, different company. This has places around the country. One's in Utah, I think one of their branches is somewhere in the Midwest, Iowa or somewhere like that. But from either of these you can order cocoons. Leafcutter bees don't do cocoons that we can harvest. They're smaller and more fragile. So they sell them in reeds. So you just buy a reed and you set the reed out and they come out. There are different clubs or organizations you can join. Pollinator partnership at... Why did I put that in yellow? That doesn't make sense. Pollinator.org is the website for that partnership. And that just gives you a sense of what other people are doing all around the world. Beevangelism. When I was a preacher, we did evangelism. Now I'm a beevangelist. Just spread the good news, tell other people about it. Okay, so we've already had some questions. What else would you like to ask? Yes?
Are there certain kind of plants they like more than others?
No. Whereas monarch butterflies just like milkweed to lay their young, these little critters just like anything that's got nectar and pollen in it. So, like I said, all of our early spring flowering trees, the bulbs and stuff that come up early, if you want to have a thriving community in your backyard, plan to plant stuff that's going to emerge when they do, 55 degrees roughly. Okay, so give them a place to eat, otherwise they'll go somewhere else.
I saw you said something about, on one of the slides, about having mud available. Do you do certain
Yes,
things for your
thank you for asking that. There has to be a mud source close to where they are going to nest. And some of the dirt around here is better for them than others. I don't know that the red clay dirt is all that great, but if you have access to some brown soil, you can even order little trays of mud from these websites. Okay, and it doesn't take a lot, but if you've got a garden spigot in your backyard that leaks, that's great. Don't fix it. Okay, if it's just a drip and there's a little thing of mud there, they love that. Of course, they need the water, but they also need the mud. So they won't be able to set up house without building materials. So put out some source of mud close to where they are. and make sure it's all the time mud and not dry dirt. Yes, sir.
Say we were to leave our nests outside, and it's all natural wood, homemade, or one of these type of parcels, what's their likelihood of survival if we don't actually intervene in harvesting?
Well, I don't know. I've not studied that myself. You might be able to find some data from these university studies. The University of Minnesota did a really good study on those on the lifestyle and the habits of bees. So I'm not sure exactly how to answer your question because I don't have any first-hand experience. But these come with a hook, so you can take them off real easy.
Well, I asked you, if they out and hang those, do they get stable? Do they tear it down a little? Maybe suspend from the tree? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of naturally occurring stuff out in nature if they're inclined to find reeds that are sticking up or laying down. I don't know. That'll be another good thing to research. Yeah. A good teacher always says, why don't you look that up and tell us when we get back together next time? Yeah. I am not a bugologist by training, okay? So all of this is what I've found out where you can find out. Yes, sir.
I have 2 bee boxes in my backyard
Oh, yeah.
that have been there for a couple of years, and I don't do anything.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to have any problem. I mean, they're empty every,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, they winter over, it seems
Yeah.
like.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
it's-
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, they've evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to survive in nature, and we as human beings, you know, just can interject ourselves into their natural process and try to help them along a little bit. That's basically what farming is just to help the natural process be more abundant.
If you don't have, if you don't know if you have this bees on your property or not, would you suggest they get the cocoons?
Sure. Yeah. It's getting a little late for mason bees. I think you can still order leafcutter bees. Leafcutter season is long enough to where we can almost get 2 cycles out of them. So that what we harvest or what we take in, if we choose to, in October might be the second generation from what emerged in June. Well, it's fun and it's easy, and it's nice knowing that we can do something to help Mother Nature along with these prolific little critters. We're helping ourselves when we help them. And if you get good enough at it and want to make it a more intense hobby, if your production rate is high enough, these companies will buy cocoons from you to put into their store to sell. Interesting. Yeah.
Do you have plans online or anything for your little house that you make with the trays? Or how do you do that?
I don't have plans drawn up. I always keep one on hand because I forget how to cut them out of a board, so I always keep one that I can measure. But you can buy a 1x8 and about 6 feet of a 1x8 will get you a really nice house. And the trays are tricky. You have to have a router with a 5/16 or 1/4 inch bit, and it's kind of tedious, but Randy does this, and this works fine, just drilling holes in the wood.
And both the mason bees and the leafcutter bees would use that.
Yeah. Like I say, now that you know something about it, you know where to go, just chase rabbits as much as you want to. There's all kinds of good information out there and lots of rabbit holes to get lost in. Okay, well, I'm really glad to see you this morning and hope this will inspire you to do your own thing in your own yard.